I'm Todd Kiblen, and what a pleasure to be here. Thank you very much it's an honor to be here in front of some familiar faces. I guess I'm going to talk about my family, who I'm very proud of. And I'll start with, well, my grandparents, they immigrated from Lebanon. Closer? Oh, okay. My grandparents came from Beirut, Lebanon in probably early 1900s. They came to Spirit Lake in 1915. And the reason I know these facts are my aunt wrote it's like an 83-page autobiography of her family, so I got a lot I fact-checked her quite a bit. And she's on top of it. So anyway, and I gave it to, I'll see it, passed around if anybody wants to read it. It's pretty centered on the Kiblens, because, we're the best, so, centered it on that. But my grandfather, he was about 10 or 11 years older than my grandmother. So, that dirty old man that he was. I guess I'm 14 years older than my wife. So. Anyway, they came here to Spirit Lake in 1915, and they were married in 1915. They bought their first. They lived in Spirit Lake. God, they moved 7 different times while they were here. Their first merchandise store is where the White Horse Saloon is. That's where their first store was, and moved along from there. Let's see if I can keep it straight. But their first grocery store was what's now the Dark Horse Pizza building. So that was their second store, you might say. My grandparents had 4 kids. The first one was my Aunt Amelia, who wrote that long letter. The second one was my dad, Charles. Third, Mitch Kiblen, and then an Uncle Tom Kiblen. In reading that story, there were a lot of Lebanese people in this area. I mean, lots and lots and lots, mostly cousins. Like Kelly Carpenter is a cousin. I'm sure a lot of you know him. He lives here. And I think it's pretty much after the mill burned, they kind of dispersed out and went to Spokane and other places. In the early 1900s, most everybody probably worked at the Panhandle lumber mill. That's where my dad and most of their family worked there. I kind of threw this in. I thought Kelly Carpenter might be here, but I'll leave that part out. A lot of you might remember Jim Hall, who grew up here in Spirit Lake. He was a Lebanese man. And Pat, his son Pat Hall, one of my very best friends. You might know him. They moved here in 1919. I mentioned the fact that my grandparents lived in 7 different houses, owned 7 different houses in Spirit Lake. That's quite a few in a 30-year span that they were here. In 1927, they bought the property at the top of the hill that's now a parking lot on the right side as you go down the hill. That's where my grandfather built the first grocery store there, which a lot of you know it as Laughlin's grocery store, but my grandfather built that building and they lived up on top of it. But it wasn't a grocery store when they built it. It was just a general merchandise store. There were other grocery stores in town. So in 1934, they sold that store to Edward Revere, yeah. Okay. Revere, and went on from there. And he continued it to be he's the one that actually, I think, had the groceries going after that also. And then my grandfather just had a general merchandise across the street of all places where Sondahl Pottery is. That was another one of their stores that they owned. And it said in that letter that he bought that your building for $400 in 1934. So that's kind of interesting. My grandfather died in 1938. He had a heart attack. And pretty much after that, in the 40s, they all kind of dispersed towards Spokane and places like that. In probably about 1937 or 8, my mom grew up in Moscow, and when she graduated from the U of I, she came to Spirit Lake on one of her first teaching jobs. And while teaching here, she told me a couple of times that Jimmy Brown Sr. was one of her students. Kind of mentioned he was kind of a wild man. You might know that if you knew him at all, or his son, for that matter. Also, Dode Seibert, she taught her in school too. So that, you know, and me knowing these people after I grew up, and found it's kind of interesting because they talk about her a little bit. You know, I was talking about my dad. He went to Gonzaga University for 1 year, played football 1 year, and then he and my mother got married in 1939 and moved to Moscow. And after World War II, he went to law school at the U of I. And then after he graduated, he bought the land title business from my grandmother. And that was started by my grandfather on my mom's side. He came to Idaho in 1900, and he and his brother, a great uncle, built the title insurance business. And now it becomes, I guess, a lot about me and my kids. But my dad died in 1970. He passed away from a heart attack. And I was 21 at the time and took over the business. And I guess I succeeded pretty well at it until 1975. I sold it to my son Dave, and he and my son Andy have run it ever since. I retired about 2010 or something like that. Let's see. Oh, and Dave's son, just throwing this in, Dave's son Caden also works at the title company. So for me, the great pride in that is the fact that my family's been there for 5 generations in Moscow. Same business for 125 years. So I'm very thankful for that. So that's kind of in a nutshell. I thought I could last longer, but in a nutshell, that's pretty much it. So I'd be open to any questions if I can answer them. I'll sure try.
Thanks again, Todd. Again, it's just so fascinating to hear those pieces, and congratulations on your long run in Moscow. Yeah. So I'm thinking people couldn't really see the pictures maybe, so maybe we can pull the screen over and we can run through them. We have, again, it's an interesting history for sure, and I didn't know until just this moment that your grandfather bought the pottery building and the building next door?
He bought the big one first.
Okay.
And that's when he sold that Riviera.
Right.
And then bought your
Right.
To scale things down because it was right after the Depression.
Okay. Because there's the pottery, and then there was another building next to it that was Kiblen's store.
Oh, okay.
Also, so I didn't know if he actually bought both of them.
That I can't say. For sure.
But in 1934, he bought across the street.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, that's all just personal stuff that I'm trying to get straight here. Go ahead, Oli.
I was just wondering, Todd, when your grandfather sold the store that we all remember as Lockling in the 50s, which was, he sold it to the Reveres.
Yes, Revere's.
And I remember that their son, Jackie, was quite a basketball player, and Spirit Lake won the state championship in 1942. And Dennis Jokes was the point guard, and, very, very good player. And they beat, I can't remember, this is when all the schools were in one classification. So Spirit Lake was playing like Idaho Falls. You've got it. There's a fellow that, Skinner, that graduated in 41. And he had a yearbook from 42 to show them, and also a program. But this Revere was a real good player too, and was only a junior. And my dad took the team down, and I think they played in Boise and won it.
Boy, that'd be a long trip.
Oh yeah, in those days. But my dad had a Chrysler Dodge dealership and used one of his vehicles to take them down. And the next year they got second. And Jackie Revere was, that's why I remembered when you mentioned, when you and I talked one time about the Reveres, I went, okay, that kind of makes sense. But what I was wondering is, there was a building, a grocery store in front of the pottery shop.
We're going to try to show a picture.
That I thought was, I don't know, as far back as I could remember in the 50s, a family named the Sippards had it, and it was called Red and White grocery store. And I was wondering if that was started by your grandfather, if it was Kiblen started it, and then
Sippards?
Red and white?
Yeah, the Red and White, I just mentioned her name. My mind is.
Sippard, is that what you said? Sippard, was that?
Sippards, yeah.
Yeah.
The Sippards ended up with it in the 50s.
Okay.
And I think Althea and I were talking, and I think Arnold Bakey had it, and it was a video store, and it burned down in like the 70s.
Actually,
I remember that, the video store.
Okay,
90s,
but
yeah.
I don't know if that was where your grandfather was, the store they were at, because.
Well, Althea said there were two buildings there, though, where you're.
I'll tell you what, let's look at the pictures. Can everybody see the screen? And
Todd, why don't you come forward so you can see the screen? So there's the red and white store listed there, and that was from 1938, a newspaper ad.
Okay, so it was.
All three existed.
All three of them are listed. Look at
Yeah.
Kiblen, Lockling, and Red and White.
this is 1938, it says here, 1938. So
Yeah.
again, that was a newspaper
Yeah.
ad for those stores.
We're gonna have to do a little research to figure this all out.
I know.
But
See,
we
that's
have-
what
we
I
have a-
was,
Yeah.
when you and I talked and you showed me that picture, I said, no, that's Lockling's. He said, no, that's my grandparents. And I'm going, you know what? I got egg in my face, I need to shut up.
Well, you didn't know my grandparents, so they wouldn't recognize, you wouldn't recognize any of that anyways.
Can you,
Yeah, but I
Althea?
remember my dad talked about your family, and his Uncle Mitch was a heck of a coach. He coached at Rafterum when I was in high school in the 50s, and they beat us most of the time, mainly because of Mitch. He was a
pretty
heck of a
active
coach.
guy.
Then he went to East Valley and opened up that school, coached at East Valley. I don't know, he had 2 or 3 heart attacks. He was a he was the nicest guy you could ever meet. The word gentleman probably didn't measure up completely to Mitch, but he was a dandy guy. And what was really funny, when I coached and we went to the state tournament, he volunteered to work the door where the teams came into the Spokane Coliseum. And every year when we'd go to state, I'd get to see Mitch, and he always, you know, he and my dad were great golfing buddies. He loved to golf. He lived at Liberty Lake, played at the Liberty Lake golf course, but he and my dad played all over and had a lot of fun with it. And I went out and beat the ball with him, but they golfed.
Well, your brother, Pete was,
Yeah.
he was a good golfer. I played with Pete a time or two.
Yeah, yeah.
He was a great guy. Just really liked him.
So in the picture there, that's looking down towards the lake, obviously, and on the left, there's the building that was the bank, and then was a pharmacy, and now is a physical therapist, the left corner. And then across from that is the hardware store and the cozy theater. And then down the block, that's the best picture we have, that
Well,
roof.
actually, we have more. I
Do we?
don't know,
Okay.
but maybe this is the best one we have to show.
Yeah,
But, okay, so the picture, Lockling's and the big building was over here, where they first owned. You can't see that building in this picture. But this is the building that, so here's where the pottery is now, and there was a building, when we bought it in 1982, there was a building right in front of it. And that's the Kiblen store that was after
the
the
lock.
big one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So again, fun to see Main Street for sure. So can we see another one, Brad? What do we got?
That's the Lockland.
So again, this is the one that's on that right-hand side where the parking lot is now. And Todd brought, well, this, we've never seen this picture before. This is a brand new picture for us. We just learned from Todd that the Kiblens actually owned that and had a store there before the Reveres. When he was saying, you know, Todd is saying, my family had that store, and we're like, no, they didn't.
I had to convince.
No, they didn't. Yeah. No, they didn't. And it's like, yeah, we know we know. No, we're so grateful now to have that additional piece of history.
Get ice and pot for a nickel. What?
Yeah.
Yeah, can you see this right here? Yeah, this. So yeah, there were more buildings further to the north there, and it's possible, Todd was saying today, that his grandfather actually built the building.
That's what that brother said.
What your aunt wrote was that her father built this building, and that just makes it so much more heartbreaking that it's gone. A certain way to think.
Todd, do you remember if the building next to your grandparents' store, if there was a cafe there in the 50s, would be just, I guess, north?
Well, that was another grocery store that my grandfather built for one of the carpenters.
Oh, okay.
And which is kind of crazy because two grocery stores. Oh, that might have just been general merchandise at that point, though.
Okay.
So, but I think Kelly Carpenter, one of those,
Okay.
had a store there.
Kelly Carpenter, the one, the younger guy on the lake,
His dad.
dad. Right.
Kelly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because yeah. Well, in the 50s, there was a cafe that became a cafe,
Okay.
next door. And then there was, Mel Jobs had a tavern there too, but after the war, he ran a tavern for a while to the north, another building beyond that, to the north. Because at one time, I think in one of the articles, it said Spirit Lake had 19 taverns. Not a shortage.
Quite a few.
Go ahead, Brad. Yeah, go ahead and tell about this.
Okay. The top left is my dad, Charles. He was the second in line. My aunt in the middle, she was the oldest. And then Mitch is on the right, my uncle. And then on the bottom, obviously the woman is my grandmother. And next to her is my uncle Tom. And then my grandfather Joseph. And that was probably taken about 1938 or so, from what I can kind of tell by their, well, just that's kind of what I think it is. Can't tell you why. Ole will probably correct me here in a minute, but.
Can you go back to that picture, please, Brad? Yep. So Todd did explain that his grandfather died in 1938, and he believes that this little boy wasn't.
He was obviously born, but
He,
small, so
he wasn't
superimposed
this big. This person is superimposed.
Oh, really?
There.
Huh.
He
So
was
they could
still,
have a family.
yeah. So they could have, a family picture of everybody. They added him into that picture.
Huh.
So, and then again, this sister, your aunt, what was her name?
Amelia, no.
Yeah.
Amelia, yeah.
Amelia. So she's the one that wrote the long memoir that, again, that Todd has just brought to us today. So it's just really wonderful to see the family. Do you know when they came from Lebanon?
I think early.
I think probably around 1900s, right in that area. And maybe not quite that
Can
early.
you tell about going to Ellis Island and the name change?
Well, yeah, actually, when our Lebanese name was Ayoub, Ayoub, which was, I have a friend that actually is from Lebanon and goes, yeah, that's a Smith or a Jones over there. You know, I mean, it's a very common name. But then when they got to Ellis Island, you know, whoever was working the shift that day said, no, it's Kiblen, that's easier to, I mean, it was just that simple. And there was a couple Mohammeds in there, of course, and some others. But then it's funny because my grandfather's brother, his name was Charles Kiblen, but he moved to Oregon and they changed it to Kiblan for some reason. So that whole batch of the family is Kiblen instead of Kiblen, but it's just kind of whatever felt good, I guess. And they weren't real formal about their names because on all the deeds I saw with my grandfather, his name was Joseph Kiblen. It just said Joe Kiblen. You know, nowadays, and that's what I did for 40 years, was search deeds and records, and we were so picky about the names and the spellings and all that stuff, but just Joe and Emma Kiblen was enough to get them by, so, but I suppose, like, you know, the old days, people weren't as picky. Right, John?
We're back.
Yeah, okay.
So go ahead, Brad, and switch this again. So we don't talk
Okay,
about-
that's the inside of I'm guessing the big store, judging from how wide it is. And that's my Uncle Mitch on the right, who pretty much managed the store. He was younger than my dad. I have no idea what year that is, but looking at him, he's probably in his 20s or so. So that was probably in the 40s, I'm sure. So, but I'm trying to think of the dates. I won't. Never mind. Oh, that's my Uncle Mitch there too. I'll bet Ole recognized that picture. I mean, and like you say, he just loved to golf. He loved people and just a great guy. The most favorite man I ever knew was my uncle. His heart was bigger than his whole body. So.
I included this picture.
That Kiblen's, so you see Main Street, but this is their roof right here. And here's the original store. So you get to see both of them now, as you would have seen them looking west on Main Street. Again, that just kind of a classic picture of that era. So, but of course, we really want to know about the movies. Yeah.
You know, in that picture, you can see from Mark Crutch's building, which the store that advertises hardware, clothing, dry goods, shoes, that in the 50s was Charters, George Charters, and his daughter, Margaret, ended up taken over, and her and Bob Ross were married and ran it. And then you notice the building to the right, that was the annex. A.P. Hagee had a barber shop in the bottom, and then the top part was a motel, a hotel. And my dad ended up with that, and that got torn down in about the 50s, late 50s. It was, but during the war, a lot of the sailors and wives would stay at the motel there or hotel, and the one, there's 3 or 4 of them in Spirit Lake. The Grand and the Northern and that one, and then the one up by the police station and by our old garage were all motels.
Isn't that where your dad was, up by the, on the corner by the, Brickle Creek? Isn't that where he had his?
Yeah. And right next to that building that Mark Crutch is remodeling right now, was a hotel for years.
Oh.
And then Sue Fox bought it and turned it into kind of a commercial building. Now they have an exercise group in the bottom and apartments up above.
It's always amazing to think about all that's happened on Main Street. So, and again, he always calls this the Annex.
Yeah.
But I also know it as the Victor Hotel. Did you ever know that name, the Victor Hotel, for this piece here?
I don't know.
But anyway, when it was gone, that's where the little park is now. That's the little park. So do we have any other pictures, or is that the last
That's the
one?
last one.
So again, Todd had volunteered for questions. So come back up, Todd.
Questions, please? Make me feel good, just ask anything.
What happened to the building? Did it burn down or?
Well, actually, what was that guy's name? Mo Smith?
Yep.
Had a hardware store in there. And he had it probably in the 70s, I'm guessing. And he had a friction fire, didn't he, that burned down? I think it burned down. He was one of those big time wrestler guys you'd see on TV and stuff. He was quite a promoter. Yeah, I just knew him a little bit, but it burned down, and then the city ended up with it. And go ahead.
I was just gonna say that Mo was still there in 1982 when we moved here, and then and that building was it was the hardware, and so in 1982, and then it very shortly after that he sold it to Lee and Don Sargent. They had the hardware, and then Dave Esterly bought the inventory. Dave Esterly worked for Lee and Don briefly, and then when they sold, Dave Esterly bought the whole inventory and moved it to Old West Hardware. And then it was vacant. And I don't know exactly the year, but it was there. I mean, as far as what else happened, I mean, again, it has, it's amazing to think if your grandfather built that building, all the things that happened there. But there was actually, for us, one of the most notable events was there was a shootout at that building. In the 80s. And then I'm guessing that, it was in the middle of the 80s that the city used it as a burning exercise for the fire department. Is that right?
I think first there was an arson fire.
There was an arson fire.
Yep.
Yeah.
About in the 80s, there were several buildings burnt down. Our old barn that was, I don't know the streets in Spirit Lake, the names, but overlooking Spirit Shores on the northwest end was a big barn that Panhandle Lumber had, that they housed their horses in the wintertime and fed out of that barn in the winter with the horses, then they logged with the horses in the spring through the fall. Well, my dad and I was teaching school, but I was staying with my dad up at the upper place at Spirit Lake, and we got a call from the fire department, said your barn's on fire, and we went down there and they put it out. Well, about a month later, my dad called me. I went back to school, and this was probably in October. My dad called me and said, well, they got it this time. It burnt down. And then where my brother had the mini storage, the gravel pit down across from the entrance to Spirit Shores, that was burnt down. And
There was a fire, definitely there was an arson fire.
the Kiblen, old Kiblen building that we've been talking about was burnt down. So that was three that happened all within a year.
What year was that?
Pardon?
What years?
I can't remember, but it was in the 80s, like,
Or late 80s or early 90s,
I
yeah.
think it was I think it was before I went back to school, so it was in the mid-80s.
Yeah.
like 86 or 7, somewhere in there.
Was the post office building there then, which is now Giorgio's?
Yes,
Yes.
It was a
And
veterinarian
a
clinic for a
veterinarian.
while.
Yeah.
that's right, yeah.
What's what?
It was a veterinarian clinic for a while.
Oh, okay, and then there was an auto parts in there too for a little bit, I think. Napa
There was a
or
lot of stuff.
Yeah, the auto parts was across, was on the corner, Western Auto, the vacant building.
Oh, yeah, I remember that too.
Can't buy it, yeah.
Did that answer your question? By any chance, about the building?
Yeah,
Yes, John.
and the long way, yes.
With all due respect to the boys, I'd like to return a moment to sports. I think we would be very remiss if we did not recognize that the girls' basketball teams also took some championships home with them from their games. I have a 3-ring notebook in my library. A number, one or more pictures of the championships that the girls' basketball teams from Spirit Lake were credited with.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. John, what year was that? Or yours? In the 30s? 40s?
Well,
Jerry playing? Jerry was playing?
My wife was,
Geraldine was very good, and so wasn't Lorraine. My dad used to talk about them, and there were several others that were very good.
yeah.
I'm glad you brought that up, yeah.
So I have a question for Todd. So, if we could just have just your own personal history. Then you were born in Moscow,
Yes.
but was some of your family still living up here? Because you have a lake place here. So just tell us how you ended up back in Spirit Lake.
Well, they might have bought it from Cliff Home in that property. I know they got some of their property from Cliff, Oldie's dad. I think in 1938, my mom said that they all scraped together and bought, our property for like $100 or $125, and 75 feet of frontage, which was all grown over. Oh, we can remember that. Just all grown over with trees and brush and stuff. And my Uncle Mitch cleared almost every bit of it off, and we put a little cabin in there, and then my mom and I built that duplex in 1976, which has just been great for our family. And then Jim Hall owned right next door to it, and his son Pat sold to me about 28 years ago. So we're so lucky to have two places right next door to each other. But it just stayed in the family. Nobody wanted to sell it, and my dad didn't like, he wasn't real wild about Spirit Lake, but Mitch, living in Spokane and Liberty Lake, he came up all the time. Mostly to golf with Cliff Holman and Jim Hall. Should have seen the three of them swimming a golf club. Oh my God. But they were good at it. But me and my family and my kids and grandkids are so lucky that they never sold it. Jeez. I mean, it's we we're up there all the time. So.
Can you tell people where you're at on the lake?
Oh, we're just a couple doors down from Settlemeyer's. So we're lucky to have that flat lot and just everything, the road, everything's flat. So we're super lucky to have that. So pretty happy.
Again, it's just an interesting, your family's still here.
And we're still here, yeah, after kind of 110 years or something like that. I don't know. God, I'm getting old, aren't I? 110, no hair, no ears. But I'm happy, so.
So more questions? Any other questions?
When I see that Dolan guy sitting back there, I just think of his dad so much. He just reminds me of Phil so much. After my dad passed away, he'd call me up and ask how things are going and help me out doing stuff. And there wasn't a nicer guy than Phil Dolan, I think, from Spirit Lake, as most everybody is.
Mitch Kiblen Phil Dolan, Phil Dolan was really, really nice, but Mitch Kiblen might have been as nice as Phil Dolan.
I have to agree. I don't think I've cried so hard except at Mitch's funeral, so he was a great guy. In fact, my cousin would say, yeah, players from 20 years afterward would still come by and visit him at the house and stuff. That's a pretty good credit to his, love of kids. So, pretty lucky to have him for an uncle. Anybody else? Another guy I got to think of too is like Dr. Hamaker. He was quite a guy. Interestingly, he's a doctor or a surgeon. Is that, I think?
Plastic surgery.
Plastic surgery.
Okay, yeah. And my dad said, or my mom, one of the two of them said that he went back to law school just to have a law degree to know, what was. I don't think he ever practiced. I don't even know if he passed the bar. And my Uncle Tom, the little guy in that picture, he was a dentist. And later in life, he went to law school too, but never cared to pursue it at all. But he just, one of those guys that, I guess school was easy for him, but that's two guys that I think of that a double, pretty advanced degrees, I guess. So.
Let me give a hand to
Thank you.